Reality Transurfing, Book 4, Ruling Reality, by Vadim Zeland. Chapter 1, Dancing with the Shadows. Segment, The Indigo Aliens. The Indigo Aliens. One of the brightest manifestations of new reality is the Indigo Children phenomenon, which has been described in detail in the book by the same name by Lee Carroll and Jan Tober. This terminology was introduced by the clairvoyant Nancy Ann Tapp. She conducted research on the relationship between personality traits and the color of one's aura. In the early 1970s, Nancy Tapp encountered an unusual phenomenon. A new type of children were being born, with a previously unseen aura color, indigo, between blue and violet. The personality of indigo children also differed from those other people. Their main characteristic was hyperactivity and attention deficit. They cannot sit still if what they are doing is not of personal interest to them. However, not all children with these traits are necessarily indigo children, and vice versa. They are all different. What unites them is an inherent sense of self-dignity and a drive towards independence. Indigo know their worth and seem to be confident that they deserve to be here in this life. That's what they are like. These children amaze grown-ups with their reasonableness. They have a very well-developed consciousness and a sober view on things for their age. They are not disposed towards bowing down before universally recognized authorities. Indigo do not accept conservatism. They think it's obvious that some things should be done in a completely different manner, while other people habitually follow the generally accepted norms and rules. One could never call them obliging children. From the point of view of child upbringing, you might say they are uncontrollable. They have their own things going on for them. To some extent, that is true for any new generation. However, the indigo generation is marked by a particular newness. For thousands of years, the alternation of generations occurred evenly and even regularly. But lately there has been acceleration in the renewal of generations. Each new one differs more and more dramatically from the previous one. The indigo children have already got their own children, who have outdone their own parents in the display of typical indigo traits. So, what is going on? The process of the revolutionary renewal of the human mind cannot take place on its own, without special reasons. As is well known in nature and in society, everything strives towards balance. Therefore, the renewal of the human mind is a counterbalance to a different process. It doesn't take much to figure out what process I'm talking about. During the last couple of decades, simultaneously with the development of information and telecommunication systems, a powerful network of pendulums has formed, which has firmly enlaced the entire Earth. Scientific and technological progress as a whole is not as terrible as its information component, which creates fertile ground for the creation and existence of pendulums. The greater the group of adherents thinking in one direction, the stronger the pendulum, and hence the stronger its power over people. In order to get control over the consciousness of a large amount of people, you really don't have to put them into vials with suction cups like those in the famous movie Matrix. It's quite enough to create an all-embracing network, and then people will and then people will automatically take their place in its cells. But what is a human being in an information cell? Is it a so-called social element, the consciousness of which is limited by his or her place in the structure, which really does resemble a matrix? The structure imperceptibly but tenaciously envelops each member in a specific set of behavioral and mental stereotypes. A person thinks he's acting freely out of his own free will, but in truth he has no idea about freedom because the configuration of his will is shaped by the structure. That person is playing a game imposed by the will that has been designated to him. Seemingly everyone is free to do what they want. Such is the nature of declared freedom. It is just that everyone can only want the things that comply with the interest of the structure. The structure teaches you to want what the structure needs. And this process of will enslavement of intention, is what we are going to talk about next. This process is synergetic by nature, that is, it is self-organizing, because pendulums as such do not have a conscious intention. Everything happens on its own, as when ice crystals are formed during the freezing process. The web of pendulums, like a colony of parasitic plants, covers the entire biosphere of the Earth. Are you scared? Or perhaps you find this idea amusing? Whatever floats your boat. Everyone is free to lightheartedly attribute all these arguments to the field of science fiction. And yet, when everyday reality appears in an unfamiliar shape, its tough realism surpasses even the boldest of fantasies. But let's go back to our kids. The tendency of will enslavement gives rise to a feedback mechanism, the appearance of children with an innate drive towards independence. That is a natural process. That is how the activity of equilibrium forces manifests itself in response to the exponential growth of the web of pendulums. On the one hand, pendulums try to arrange the world in an order, driving people into a structure resembling a matrix. On the other hand, the Indigo people balance out the dominance of pendulums, as if thereby completing their predestined mission. The children's behavior is aimed at destroying any kind of order. Squeezed within the limits of stereotypes and conditionality, they strive to break free. All children, but Indigo children in particular, are very sensitive to excess potentials. For example, any falseness is immediately uncovered. When people try to ingratiate themselves with them, they start getting fresh. Should you overpraise them, they start playing up. Any order gives rise to polarization, which children immediately want to destroy. I'm not going to sleep. I don't want porridge. I'll do it myself. The tendency towards disobedience and naughtiness in children is not a result of maliciousness, but rather a consequence of a natural desire to get rid of external control. Sometimes it may seem that children are doing certain things in spite, but in such cases they are acting unconsciously, unintentionally. They do not plan or scheme their provocative behavior. It happens naturally on its own. That is, the activity of equilibrium forces is manifest in response to the grown-ups trying to cram their children into formation. The drive of Indigos towards independence also has an effect on their attitude to religion. New children find it difficult to accept the modern church, writes Carol Ann Tober in their book. Indigos come to this world with a heightened sense of self-respect and an unshakable certainty that they are the children of God. In that case, do they need any middlemen in order to speak with God? Hardly. Indigo children are mainly guided by the voice of their heart rather than their mind. Grown-ups think they are doing a good thing when they act appropriately. Children are of the opinion that the important thing is to do everything from the heart, with love, and contrary to what is considered the correct thing to do. And what if, a long time ago in your former lives, your children were your parents, and now you've switched places? These ancient souls are once again trying to educate you, teaching you many wise lessons. The sensibility of indigo children is a result of their heightened awareness. They are aware of what is going on and know who is who. Awareness is sharpened when the focus of attention is aimed at yourself and not at the world around you. After all, if someone is completely absorbed by problems imposed on him from outside, he dives into the unconscious game. The awareness of indigos is counterbalancing this tendency of the sedated mind of people caught in the pendulum webs. All children from their birth are notable for their striking individuality. In early childhood, they are very beautiful and charming. The secret behind the appeal of children is contained in the harmonious unity of the soul and mind. They accept themselves as they are, and hence the original beauty of their soul is not distorted by the false masks of the mind. Then why, as these wonderful creatures grow older, do they develop certain unpleasant traits and weaknesses? They are, after all, the children of God, and hence beautiful and powerful like God himself, despite the helplessness of their early age. They initially hold the power of the Creator, which enables them to shape a new reality. But the talents of God's children do not manage to reveal and manifest themselves because pendulums rid them of their divine power, the unity of the soul and mind. Children come into this world and gullibly watch it with their wide-open, bead-like eyes. They see life as promising and full of hope. But pendulums are the ones ruling the world, pendulums that act by the principle divide and conquer. Pendulums unite the intentions and ambitions of people, thereby destroying personal uniqueness and integrity. The separation and alienation of the mind from the soul leads to the loss of divine beauty and power. This is in italics, so let me repeat it. The separation of alienation of the mind from the soul leads to the loss of divine beauty and power. With time, small and large hopes get shattered. Some individuals go through this process in a paced and painless way, whereas for others who are not as lucky, this process is rough and happens quickly. If you were to look into the eyes of the children from a children's home, you would perhaps notice two seemingly incompatible things: hope and despair. As if there is just one question in those eyes: is this really how it's supposed to be? The world of pendulums constantly points out to children their vulnerability and inferiority. First, distrust arises in their mind, and then comes fear, which gets under their skin and makes them grow accustomed to it. But you cannot simply get scared and run away. You have to somehow survive in this aggressive environment. Finding themselves under the powerful influence of the structure, the children of God are forced to become its elements. As they get older, children start worrying that they are not like everyone else, because those who are like everyone else can henpeck them, which is what often happens. It is safer in a crowd, and if you are standing outside the crowd, you can become an outcast. That is how children gradually lose the gifts given to them from birth: independence, consciousness, intuition, individuality. All of these qualities are mainly inherent in the indigo children, but to a structure this would equal death. Therefore, the process of will enslavement keeps expanding. Who will win this battle? No one knows. There is only one thing that matters to us as long as the structure hasn't gained final victory. We have to get back now, in this life, at least a fraction of the power given to us by God. Transurfing will help us do that. And what about you, dear reader? Perhaps you're an indigo. Actually, it doesn't matter. We are all basically the same, either grown-up children or grown-ups, children. End segment.